Okay, we got the inflation numbers. We were expecting 2.9%. We got 2.9%. So now what the result is of the inflation numbers coming in on expectation is we're getting a Bitcoin pump. We're back at 99,121. Probably going to break 100,000 today. Altcoins are absolutely running, and we've got one big barrier out of the way. Now, yesterday, when we were on the show, I made a buy list and I said that for the next part of the altcoin cycle, I want to be in aggressive altcoins that are going to serve me for the last part of the bull market, right? And I made a list and I published the list for you guys to see. And then I got a whole lot of comments saying, hey, why did you choose Sol, SUI, and a Hyperliquid as your three best L1s? And of those three, which one is going to perform the best in Q1? And so I went out to Twitter and I did a poll and I asked Twitter, who do you think will perform the best in Q1? Hyperliquid, SUI, or Solana? And the overwhelming majority said SUI. In this show, what I'm going to do is I'm going to break down for you which one I think is going to perform the best, not only in Q1, but actually for the rest of the cycle. So if that sounds good to you, it's going to be a massive show. We're putting up Sol versus SUI versus Hyperliquid, and we're going to decide which one is the best one. So let's go, guys. I know we were late. You have to blame Josh because it's Josh's system that wasn't working. So that's why you need to blame Josh for this, right? It's right. Yeah, we've got to blame Josh. System was not working. System's not working. But anyway, we are late, but we are here and we're here to bring you, I don't know, I think a very, very, very fun alpha pack show. I think we're putting a showdown today. We're going to determine once and for all, who's better, Sol, SUI, or Hyperliquid? Which one should you hold in your portfolio and which one is going to outperform? And we're going to analyze each one of them by fundamentals, by pumpermentals, by performance, by market sentiment, by brand loyalty, and by a whole lot of other metrics. And then we're going to decide which one is the best one to hold in your portfolio, not only for Q1, which is what Twitter was voting for, but actually for the rest of the cycle, which one you should have in your portfolio. So if that sounds good to you, what I need you to do is very, very, very quickly, because we are going to run out of time today, I need you to subscribe to the channel and join the 1.142 million subscribers. And then what I need to do is obliterate the like button. Yesterday, 2,200 likes. That's like nothing. We need to get like 5,000 likes in the show. So let's get, you're laughing, but you know, that's all we get here is we get likes. We get nothing else. We just get likes. That's it. Just like. And I know a lot of people were actually asking for the show. Anyway, before we get into the actual alpha of the show, before we go into digging deep into SUI versus Solana versus the new shiny object, which is Hyperliquid, let's quickly just look at the inflation numbers. So remember, we said that there was one hurdle between now and the inauguration, and that was the inflation numbers. And we said that if the inflation numbers come in above 2.9%, the market's probably going to get scared that there's a lot of inflation. If it came in under 2.9%, then the market was going to rally. Well, we came in at 2.9%, which means that we kind of got a free pass. We got like a stay of execution. And now, between now and the elections, or the inauguration, there's pretty much no more macro hurdles in the way. All the macro data is out, the jobs numbers are out, the ISM manufacturing numbers are out, everything's out. There are no more hurdles between now and the inauguration, right? And pretty much the inauguration happens on Monday. I need your help, right? So there is the crypto ball, which is happening on Friday. That would be the 17th of January. And I think I want to go to the crypto ball, but that would mean that I'd have to leave tomorrow, which means no show tomorrow, no show Friday. Then I'd probably stay in the US and be there for the inauguration and then come back like next week, Tuesday or Wednesday. So in the chat, what I need you guys to do, should I go to the crypto ball? Should I actually go to this Donald Trump crypto ball? I've got a ticket, I've got an invite. Should I actually go? Please do a poll whether I should actually go. And that would mean no shows for like Thursday, Friday, Saturday. The researchers are going, yeah. I promise you, if you saw the office now, the researchers are going, yeah, no shows, no work. So let me know if you think I should go. We are trying to book full disclosure, we are trying to book a ticket. So as I was saying, look, when Trump actually gets inaugurated on Monday, between now and Monday, the old guard is effectively out. The new guard is effectively now in or coming in on Monday. And on Monday, we turn over a new leaf. It's the beginning of a new dawn. And then we look forward to maybe Trump's executive order or anything else that he may do in crypto, and hopefully he will commute 𝗙𝗢𝗙𝗢𝗡𝗧 sentence on Monday. So that is the situation, and I mean the SEC gave us, of course, are like leaving parting gifts to people like Elon, to people like crypto. Yesterday, Gary Gensler's out. He resigned and he's leaving on Monday. But just before he resigns, SEC sues Elon Musk, alleging failure to properly disclose the Twitter ownership. I mean, how petty can you actually be? You're going to get fired or you're leaving, but before you leave, you basically start dropping all these bombshells on crypto people. I don't know if you watched this yesterday, this interview that he did. I can't play sound today because Josh's system doesn't work, but this was actually a very funny interview if you haven't actually watched it. Anyway, let's get into the real alpha of the day, right? Now, what is the real alpha of the day? Yesterday, I told you guys that I was restructuring my portfolio and I was making a buy list for the rest of the cycle, right? And I said to you guys that in the rest of the cycle, I think we are entering the most aggressive part of the crypto bull market. I think we are now going into this part of the bull market. Let's see if we can get Bitcoin to 100 during the show. I think I may have a solution for this. Just close your eyes for 1 second and let's try and get Bitcoin to 100 during the show. Twitter, close your eyes, bro. You can't do it with your eyes open. We can do it. We can actually get Bitcoin to 100,000. Anyway, let's get into the alpha of the day, and there's big alpha here today. So I said to you yesterday, we're going into the next part of the altcoin, the bull market. This promises to be the most aggressive part of the bull market. And so you have to readjust your portfolio to the tokens that you think are going to make the most sense and going to give you the most returns in the next part of the bull market. What we know for sure is that you cannot be holding on to tokens that you are emotionally attached to, right? These are not girlfriends. These are not ex-girlfriends here. These are tokens. You need to hold on to the ones that are actually going to perform, right? We cannot now be holding tokens that aren't going to perform. And so what I did yesterday was I made this list, and in the list, I put my entire buy list with my entire thesis. And I'm not going to get into the whole thesis now because I think that is the show that we did yesterday. For those of you who didn't watch it, you can go and watch it on YouTube. But after I made the show, specifically in Frontrunners, but actually in a lot of other mediums, people said to me, you put in Sol, you put in SUI, you put in Hype, you put in Sonic. Which one of these do you think is going to be the best performing blockchain? And that really got me thinking, which one between Sol, SUI, and Hyperliquid is going to be the best performing blockchain? Now, of course, the crypto market doesn't have any patience. And so they kept asking for which one is going to perform the best in Q1, as if the world ends in Q1. Well, I put a poll to Twitter, and on Twitter, you can see that the majority of people said that SUI is going to be the best performing blockchain in Q1. Now, let's take the starting point as today's price. So today's price, give or take, Solana is $188, SUI is $4.5, and Hyperliquid is $22. Let's do another poll here. By the way, what's the poll of whether I should go to Washington or not?
76% say yes.
So far, 76% say yes. And that's Tudor's friends in Romania because he doesn't want to work. Okay, now what we should do is let's make another poll here. Which one do our YouTube community believe is going to be the best performing blockchain? Let's do two polls. One in Q1, so up until 31 March 2025, and then let's do until the end of the cycle. So in other words, let's say November 2020, the end of the cycle. And I'm going to walk you through my thinking as to which one of these is the best performing one. Which one will perform the best, not only in Q1, but actually until the end of the cycle. Cool. So that sounds good to you. Let's get the show on the road. I think the first thing that we have to understand is that when you're talking about tokens, and you're talking about tokens on a very short-term time horizon, like you're talking about tokens between now and the 31st of March, the truth is that when you're talking about tokens on such a short time frame, the fundamentals don't actually matter, right? So you can go to as many terminals as you want, and you can look for as many comparisons as you actually want, and you can compare Sol to SUI and Solana. But the truth is, when you're looking at tokens in such a short time frame, fundamentals don't really matter. That is when the pumpermentals actually matter. So if you're trading for a short time span, then you'd probably be wasting a lot of your time actually looking at the fundamentals, and you probably should be looking at pumpamentals. But looking at pumpamentals alone is probably not the smartest move. You should look at pumpamentals relative to the market cap of the token. And the reason why I say that is because in the short term, if you want a token to pump, you need the token to have a low market cap, because a low market cap token is a token that is easier to pump. Now, what do I mean by that? If you look at the fully diluted valuations of Solana, SUI, and Hyperliquid, what you'll realize is that Solana has got a $110 billion market cap. SUI's got a $45 billion market cap, fully diluted, and Hyperliquid has a $22 billion fully diluted market cap. What that means is that at face value, if you were to double the value of Solana, you would need to increase the market cap by $110 billion. Now that's a very, very big number. Whereas if you wanted to increase the market cap of Hyperliquid, or to double it, you just need to increase the market cap by $22 billion. To make matters even better for Hyperliquid and worse for Solana, what we need to be looking at is not fully diluted valuation, but actually just market cap. And the reason why we do that is because we've got to look at the number of tokens that are actually in circulation, not the tokens that are not yet in circulations. The less tokens there are in circulation, the easier it is to move the market cap up, which means that every fundamental or pumpamental, let's call it not even fundamental, let's call it every pumpamental bullet will push up the price a whole lot easier, right? And so here again, Hyperliquid wins by a factor of 10x. Because if you want to double the market cap of Hyperliquid, you have to add $7 billion to the market cap. Whereas if you add $7 billion to the market cap of Solana, you won't even increase the price by 8%. And so from a purely pumpamental point of view, Hyperliquid really has the best chance of growing of growing in the next part of the cycle, followed by SUI, and then followed by Solana. The only thing is that it now all has to be accompanied by a roadmap of announcements and progressions that will cause those pumpamentals, right? So when you're looking at a token in the short term, fundamentals really don't matter, pumpamentals matter a whole lot more. If you're looking at these tokens on a multi-cycle view, like I am, I'm not buying tokens to hold tokens for 1 or 2 or 3 months, because to be honest, I consider that trading. If you're looking to hold something between now and the end of the cycle, what you know is that that token will face a whole lot of headwinds, right? And the only thing that can really fix a token when it comes to real fundamental headwinds is actually fundamentals, right? Because pumpamentals can't get a token out of a bear market. Because when the music's on and everybody is buying tokens like crazy, when you get to this part of the bull market, no one really cares about what the facts are. People are just buying to get exposure, and they're buying it in fundamentals. But when you get to this part of the market, or any part of the market, even if you just get to this little part of the market over here, then here people really start asking, hold on a second. I know I was drunk, I was exuberant, I spent a lot of money in the bull market, but now when the bear market happens, people start asking real questions, and they start really digging into the fundamentals. And that's why what you realize is that tokens with good fundamentals often tend to perform well over multi-cycles, whereas tokens with bad fundamentals usually perform well in one cycle. And I think probably the best example of that is, you could say, Matic. If you look at Matic was one of the best performing tokens. I think it's called Polygon. Was one of the best performing tokens in the last cycle. And you can see never ever got a chime back. And the reason is that this token pumped a lot on pumpamentals in the last bull market. But then when the market came down, people started asking, well, where are the fundamentals? As I said, I did say to you guys that Bitcoin was going to hit 100,000 while we were on the show. Looks like it's about to happen. So just hold on tight. It's going to happen. So in the bear market, or in times where the market is tough, people really start asking tough questions about their token decisions. And so going back to it, short term, you want the lowest market cap token with the biggest fundamentals, and long term with the biggest pumpamentals. And long term, you want the token with the biggest fundamentals. So you got to ask yourself, how long are you investing in? If you're investing in the short term, well, then probably you need to be looking at SUI or Hyperliquid. If you're investing for the long term, then you may ask yourself a different question. And I'm going to answer both those questions, but I'm going to do it using some kind of fundamental analysis. And I laid out my thesis in this pick your fighter thing that I made for us today. So I want to start off by looking at Solana. And then we'll look at SUI, and then we'll look at Hyperliquid. And at the end of it, we'll put the whole thing together. And so I broke down Solana into a couple of categories. The first thing is I looked at the advantages. I said, what advantages does Solana have? Just general advantages. And I said, look, let's just quickly analyze it. The first thing is Sol is a familiar coin. And what we're seeing in the cycle is we're seeing that a lot of traders are coming in with what I called old new money, right? So when I say new old money. When I say new old money, what I mean is it's new money, but it's coming from the old investors that were actually here in the last cycle. And you know that the tokens that have actually been running are the ones that these people actually understand, like all these XRPs and Hedera's and Cardanos and even the Algorands. I mean, Algorand is a ghost town, but yet people are coming to buy it. Why? Because it's a familiar coin. And of the three coins, Solana is the most familiar coin, right? Also, Solana has the highest chance of getting an ETF, right? And if you look at the chances of it getting an ETF in 2025, there's a 76% chance that Solana will get an ETF in 2025. Now, and there's already been a whole lot of ETF applications actually submitted, right? Now, if Solana actually gets this ETF, then I've seen some analysts predict that between $2.7 and $5 billion will actually flow into the ETF, right? Now, I actually went and did a little bit of analysis on that. And I said, look, there are these ETFs that are currently in the system with the SEC. We are getting a market-friendly SEC, a crypto-friendly SEC. If they do approve the Solana ETF and $5 billion actually does go, because that is what JP Morgan's actually predicting, how would that compare to Bitcoin and ETH? Now, this is a little bit of a bad comparison because these guys, this market cap assumes that the ETF has already been approved, and this market cap is before the ETF actually gets approved. But if we got $4 billion flowing into a Sol ETF, that would mean 4.43% of its market cap. So I think that's a little bit ambitious. But nonetheless, remember, Solana has got the highest chance of actually getting an ETF. Will they get an ETF by April? Probably not. And so on the long term, it's probably a good bet. But in the short term, probably not going to happen. All right, next thing. Solana is the most established coin of the three in Wall Street. And not only that, David Sachs, who's the new crypto czar, is a massive, massive, massive Solana bull, right? He actually even tweeted, he said, one of the dumber attacks on yours truly this year was that I dumped my Solana bags on retail. If that were true, they'd be making me a fortune right now. Congratulations to all the Sol holders. Congratulations to all the Sol holders. So David Sachs, the new crypto czar, is very, very, very much a Solana bull and a Solana fan. And to be honest, I don't think he's ever spoken about Hyperliquid, and I don't think that he's spoken about SUI at all. So also, Solana have a moonshot. And their moonshot is that they've created this Solana phone, and this Solana phone has got a decentralized app store. It's pretty much the only phone with a decentralized app store. Now, of course, the reason why they did this is because Apple and Google started blocking crypto apps. And so they said, look, if Apple and Google are blocking crypto apps, we'll take a moonshot and we'll create the first Web3 decentralized app store, which works on this operating system, which is a Solana phone operating system, which is a derivative of Android. And so Solana really have a big moonshot with this Web3 app store of the future. And that's like a real big plus. But again, it's not something that's going to materialize by March. All right, lastly, Solana has amazing, amazing, amazing momentum. Now, a lot of people will say, but Solana isn't moving and Solana isn't moving. But the truth is that if you take the Solana chart and if you plot the Solana chart since the beginning of the cycle, there's not many tokens that have performed as well as Solana has performed, right? So like, if you look at it, Solana started the cycle at $7.83. It's got 2,355%. So yes, it may not be moving very quickly now. And the reason why it's not is because of the market cap, right? Because the market cap is so high, to double the FDV of Solana would mean that you have to add $110 billion in FDV. Whereas if you want to double SUI, you have to add $45 billion. Much easier. It's much easier to pick SUI up, and in fact, much more easy to pick up Hyperliquid. So that is the Solana general advantages. Now let's look at usage and adoption. Okay, Solana is by far the most used blockchain. Most apps don't even chart Hyperliquid yet. And if you compare Solana to all the other blockchains, and specifically SUI, you can see from a daily active addresses, here Solana has 7.3 million, whereas SUI has 852,000. So from a transaction point of view and from a usage point of view, Solana is 10 times bigger than SUI. Initially, people said it's all about meme coins. And the truth is that, yes, Solana did actually win in the meme coin game. But that's not where it ended. In fact, let me actually try and show you this. But I have to log into my wallet first. And I don't want you guys to see my password. Okay. There we go. Let me in, please. Let me in. Okay. Hold on a second. Okay, so I think we're in now. So initially people said, okay, but this whole thing is meme coins on Solana. The truth is, though, it's not. Because if you go to cookie.fun, which shows you the AI agent narrative, what you realize is that the AI agent narrative is really a two-horse race. And it's a two-horse race between Base and Solana. Let's go to Base. Thank you very much. Okay, hold on. Let's just connect to my wallet. Okay, there we go. So you can see that it's really a two-horse race between Base and Solana, which means that there's no way that you can say that Solana is just a meme coin chain, because not only is it now the biggest when it comes to AI and AI infrastructure, but actually it's also the second biggest chain when it comes to the first biggest chain when it comes to Deepin, right? So all the Deepin projects, or the majority of the Deepin projects, actually live on Solana. And that is as per a Messari report. If you look at the Messari report around the state of Deepin, what you realize that most of the Deepin projects that have any kind of adoption are actually living on Solana. So anyone that says that Solana's adoption is only on meme coins has another thing coming. That's not the case. DeFi, which is the new decentralized finance for AI, is also really gaining traction on Sol. You can see a lot of the projects are actually on Solana. And so what Solana's proven is that it's a fast and cheap chain, and that as a result of the fact that it's a fast and cheap chain, a lot of people are actually going to use it. And so on top of that, you also have great awareness and adoption by people in Wall Street and in Web 2. And you can see that Franklin Templeton talks a lot about Solana. You can see adoption is on the rise. You can see that Phantom, the Solana-based wallet, which is not a Solana-based wallet now, but what started off as a Solana-based wallet, has huge adoption. All right, now let's move on to ecosystem. So let's just go through the advantages. It is the most used blockchain. It's now the home of AI agents. It's the home of DeFi. It's the home of Deepin. It probably has the biggest it has the biggest ecosystem of dApps, and it has huge adoption by big players, right? So if you look at some of the big players, Visa is now on Solana, PayPal is now on Solana, Fuse Wallet is now on Solana. Pretty much all the big multinationals that are building on blockchain are building either on ETH or on Solana. And if you look at the dApp ecosystem, what you can see is that really no one beats Solana. They got Pump.Fun, they got Radium, they got Photon, they got Phantom, they got Jupiter. In fact, they've got all of this entire infrastructure. So from a usage point of view, none of the blockchains, not ETH, not SUI, not Hyperliquid, none of them come to Solana. Now let's look at the third section, which is analytics or performance. If you look at Solana is the only blockchain which actually has a high TPS at the moment. If you look at it right now, the transactions per second that Solana has been doing in the last hour has been 4,349. On top of that, if you look at the average fee per transaction, and I've broken it down for you guys here, the average fee per transaction is just less than 1 cent on Solana, which as compared to SUI is 1.2 cents. So Solana is a really fast blockchain. It is really cheap. On top of that, its TVL is growing exponentially, and its stablecoin market share is actually starting to grow exponentially, as you can see. So I think what we can say from a fundamentals point of view, Solana definitely is the strongest chain. Now let's look at some disadvantages, because there's not only advantages, there are a whole lot of disadvantages which I think we have to pay attention to. First thing is, it's got the highest market cap. And because it's got the highest market cap, it's the heaviest to move. You can't get away from that. The second thing is that Sol has big unlocks. And to make it worse, no one actually knows what these unlocks actually look like because of what happened with FTX. No one actually knows what the unlock mechanism for Sol actually looks like at the moment. Okay, so that is probably the two biggest issues that we have with Solana. And that summarizes our Solana fundamental analysis. Now, the truth is, as I said to you, fundamental analysis doesn't really matter in the short term. But in the long term, if you're going to be holding this bag from now until the end of the cycle, or if you're going to be holding a bag multi-cycle, I think we can say that Solana has a very good chance of winning. Now let's go to SUI, and let's look at the SUI advantages. So I think the first thing around the SUI advantages is that SUI is this cycle's shiny object. And what we know about every cycle is that every cycle has a shiny object, and that shiny object usually runs. And I think what we've seen so far is that SUI is this cycle's very successful shiny object. You've got people like 𝗲𝗏𝗡 talking about it. You've got Eric Trump, who yesterday or 2 days ago mentioned that he's got SUI in his portfolio. And just in general, if you look at the price performance of SUI, I think we can agree that from a cycle point of view, this is the winning horse in terms of the shiny new object for the cycle. You can see that it was the best performing L1 or the best performing major asset of 2024. It really did beat all the big assets in 2024. So that is, from a fundamentals point of view, what SUI looks like. It's also got, as I said, amazing price momentum. And I think more than that, it's got amazing announcement momentum. So when I say amazing announcement momentum, they've managed to space their announcements in such a way that it keeps pushing up the price, right? So you can see Grayscale launched the Trust, SUI USDC integration, they launched Walrus, Van Eck and SUI, and they just keep with announcements. And that's typical of the shiny object of that cycle. But remember, if you want it to last for multiple cycles, you have to have the fundamentals. You have to have the fundamentals. And the big question is whether SUI will have the fundamentals. Also, when SUI started, you could say that Aptos was its competitor. And you can see that Aptos was in rank number 32 on CoinMarketCap at the beginning of January. And today, Aptos is number 28, and SUI has moved up to 14. So definitely from a momentum point of view, SUI has incredible momentum. They also have amazing partnerships. They have a partnership with GAF around the SUI accelerator, which I think is one of the most exciting partnerships that there's out there. This is one of the best. It's based in the UAE, and it's one of the best accelerators out there. There's a lot of money behind it, and that brings venture capital funding into the ecosystem. Now let's look at the usage and adoption. So I'll say this: SUI does have a fast-growing ecosystem. There's lots of integrations. There's an integration into Phantom Wallet. There's the USDC integration. It's got a selection of DEXs. It's got SUISwap. It's got Cetus. It's got Deepbook, which is the liquidity. And it really has got a big infrastructure of projects that are integrated or building onto SUI, right? These projects also have usage. So you have TVL and you actually have usage. There's a relatively healthy ecosystem of meme coins. We're big fans and big supporters of Lofi. It's done very well. In fact, let's see how Lofi has done. I know that all the meme coins have been hit. It's one of the only meme coins that I still own because I've really sold all my meme coins to buy AI agents. Holy shit, what actually happened here? Let's have a look here. Lofi. Let's take it from KuCoin. Okay, I mean it looks like it's doing pretty well. It's $130 million market cap still. So it does. So SUI does have a big meme coin ecosystem which is actually being established, and as a result of the fact that it's got a big meme coin ecosystem, it gives people something to trade. And so therefore, there's a lot of DEX volume, and you're probably reading a lot of headlines around DEX volume. And then there's, of course, integrations. SUI has got a whole lot of integrations with wallets. They announced an integration with Phantom, which is coming in early 2025. So there's a lot of integrations and a lot of partnerships. So from that point of view, SUI is developing. Obviously, you can't expect SUI to have the same fundamentals as Solana, because Solana's got much, much, much more of a head start. But I think SUI is doing pretty well. Now let's look at the performance. So SUI is fast and SUI is cheap. To measure SUI against Solana at the moment is probably a little bit unfair, because Solana has a lot of real usage and SUI has a lot of hypothetical usage or not real usage. Okay, but if you look at the average transaction cost, both of them hover around 1 cent. So now we can say that the average transaction on these blockchains is about 1 cent. And that's, I think, both fast and both cheap. What I will say, though, is that the technology behind SUI, the Move technology, is superior technology to Rust. Move is a derivative of Rust, and it is an improvement on Rust. And it has a lot of things that are built into the language, and a lot of things that you can do with Move that you can't do with Rust, such as social logins and a whole lot of other things. Remember that Move is the language that Facebook was going to use to bring blockchain to billions and billions and billions of users, right? And so because of that, what you've got is you've got this amazing, amazing language. If Move had launched at the same time that Solana had launched, if SUI launched at the same time that Solana had launched, I think that probably SUI would have gained. But because Solana has the network effects, sometimes it's not the best technology that actually lands up winning. That often it's not the best technology that actually lands up winning. So now let's look at, and of course, as I said, SUI's TVL is actually growing pretty well. You can see the growth is pretty parabolic. So there's stable coins coming in. There's a $416 million market cap coming in. And so I think that SUI is growing very, very, very effectively. Now let's look at the disadvantages of SUI. So we've looked at the advantages, and now let's look at the disadvantages. I think the biggest disadvantage for me around SUI is the fact that there's no real killer application. There's no pump.fun. There's no Hyperliquid DEX. SUI has very, very, very good technology, but up until now, they don't have anything that's proprietary or new or where their chain is actually winning. So I haven't seen, like, as I said, a version of pump.fun. I haven't seen an application where I can put my hand on my heart and say, you know, when you look at this application on SUI, this is why SUI is going to win. I haven't found that application, and I don't think SUI's found that application. Now, do I think that they will find it at some point? I'm almost sure. But up until now, I don't know what the SUI killer application is. On Sol, I know it's pump.fun and I know it's AI agents, right? And that brings me to the next point. SUI has no real sector domination. Where does SUI dominate? It's not the biggest in AI. It's not the biggest in meme coins. It's not the biggest in perps trading. It's not the biggest in TVL. It's not, what is it the biggest in? What is it the best in, right? And I always say, like, you may not like this example, but I'm going to give it to you anyway. If you were taking your wife to have her boobs done, would you take her to the general doctor or would you take her to a specialist plastic surgeon? I hope the answer is you take her to a specialist plastic surgeon. I really hope it is. If you love your wife, right, you should take her to a specialist. But what I mean is that people often go to a specialist when they need something. And I don't know what SUI is the winning blockchain in. That's my problem. I want to know what SUI is the winning blockchain in, and I just can't find that application. And so that's another one of the disadvantages. And then lastly, one of the disadvantages around SUI is the unlocks. There are lots of unlocks, which are coming up. Sorry, I've been kicked out. There are lots of unlocks which are actually coming up. And so you're dealing with a very, 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 very aggressive unlock schedule. Of which the first one is in 6 months, in 16 days. You're dealing with a very, very, very aggressive unlock schedule. And so I think that when you're dealing with that kind of unlock schedule, if you're going to hold it multi-cycle, you have to account for the fact that you're going to get token unlocks on your head and that the protocol needs to grow faster than the token unlocks if it's going to maintain the valuation. So that is the fundamentals of SUI. So I think from a fundamentals point of view, I think we can clearly say that Solana is way, way, way ahead of SUI, but doesn't mean that SUI can't catch up. Remember, right now, Solana is SUI is less than half the valuation of Solana. And so there's still probably lots and lots and lots of room for upside. Okay, now let's go into the more controversial one. And that is Hyperliquid, right? So I added Hyperliquid to my portfolio yesterday. I did a little bit of an about turn. I was convinced by all these things into the market. Let's talk about Hyperliquid and why Hyperliquid may actually succeed. Now, I didn't do for Hyperliquid advantages and performance and stuff like that. And the reason is we just don't have enough data. And that's maybe one of the problems around Hyperliquid. But let's look at the advantages of Hyperliquid. So for those of you that don't know what Hyperliquid is, it's a layer 1 blockchain, which is built with the Cosmos SDK. It's very, 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 very fast, but it's very, very, very fast. And as you can see over here, it is the first application on this blockchain is the Hyperliquid, what I call the SEX-DEX. Now, what is the SEX-DEX? It is a decentralized exchange which looks and feels and acts like a centralized exchange. And that is what you get when you trade on Hyperliquid. That is also why people came to this Hyperliquid ecosystem, because there was finally a perpetuals DEX where you could trade your favorite perps in a decentralized DEX, but you could trade it using the you could trade it in a decentralized way using Hyperliquid. All right, so let's look at the advantages. Number one is they have launched with the killer application. Most blockchains struggle to find the killer application, which example SUI, and Hyperliquid actually launched with the killer application. And as a result of that, they managed to attract a lot of users and a lot of TVL very, very fast. Now, you can have the best technology in the world, but you can't attract the users. And if you don't attract the users, well, then what is that technology actually worth, right? And so the first use case of Hyperliquid is one that has been extremely, extremely successful. They've got a very strong founding team. They've got a decent token distribution, although I'll talk about that a little bit more. They managed to attract a lot of fast capital because of their structure and because of the fact that they didn't actually raise money through VCs for their launch. They are structured to please the community and not to please the VCs, right? The only caveat is that when they launched, they gave huge airdrops to people that used the protocol. And what I know for sure is that a lot of those airdrops, or most of those airdrops, went into a bunch of centralized cabal members, which all now hold the token supply. So whereas the team didn't get a token supply, and whereas there were no VCs, I think that we got the same effect through the way that they did it. Anyway, because of the big trading, Hyperliquid have a lot of fees. And what they do with the money that they make from the fees is they use a percentage of that to actually buy and burn tokens. And so while other protocols are emitting tokens, Hyperliquid is doing exactly the opposite. It's actually burning tokens. And it's doing it at a very, very, very fast rate, right? Like you can see that they have a lot of fees over here. On one day, they did $1.9 million of fees. And they use a big percentage of that to actually buy and actually burn tokens. So the token actually become deflationary. And there's a big hype around what they have. In terms of an ecosystem, look, the problem with Hyperliquid is that it's not truly open source, which means that not anyone can just go and build on this protocol, right? And so right now, even though there is a small ecosystem actually developing on Hyperliquid, right now the majority of this stuff is either very, very closed or not actually real open source. So yes, you do have an ecosystem and it is growing, but it's not a real fast growing ecosystem because this project is not really an open source project. So now let's move to the disadvantages. So we know what I want to add in one more advantage or two more. One is they've got a ticker auctioning mechanism, which means that instead of letting everybody launch tokens that are going to be launched on the DEX, they have this auction mechanism, which means that only serious people can afford to launch tokens on the DEX, which means that if you want, there'll be a lot less rugs, there'll be a lot less serious projects on the protocol. And then lastly, there's no real exchange listings. So it doesn't have a Binance listing. It doesn't have a Bybit listing. It doesn't have an OKX listing. The reason why that is because it's not really an open source project. And so the exchanges don't really know how to integrate this project. Now let's look at the disadvantages. So I'm going to write this as well. No real exchange listings. Okay, so now let's look at disadvantage. Number one, it's very centralized. It's not open source. It means that, number one, there's not a lot of validators, and they have tried to address the fact that there's not a lot of validators, but the reality is it's very, 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 very centralized. That's not a big thing because a lot of blockchains actually start centralized, and then over time, they decentralize. Number two, there are more airdrops coming, and for people who have been trading. Now, that does two things. One is it's going to put more tokens in the hands of the cabal, and two, it's going to put more tokens in the hands of people who can dump on you if they want to dump on you. The third disadvantage that I have here is there's zero transparency. Because this thing is so closed source, and because the validators are all owned by the same people, and it's not an open source project, there is zero transparency. They can say what they want, they can do what they want, and we'll never actually know any better, right? Also, as a result of the fact that it's not really open source, there's no real ecosystem, and as I said, there's no real exchange listings. Now, when we get the exchange listings, it could put this token into a period of price discovery. And if it does that, then the problem is that the price discovery may be down. The people may say, well, hold on a second. At a $20 billion fully diluted valuation, this chain is actually expensive. So that is the advantages and disadvantages of Hyperliquid. Now let's put the whole thing together. So we've heard the pros and we've heard the cons. The question is, which one is going to outperform by the end of March? And which one would you be willing to hold for multi-cycle? And the truth is that you should probably be holding all three of them, or at least two of the three. And the reason why you should be holding if you're holding multi-cycle, you should probably be holding all three of them. Why? Because Solana is the surest bet, but it probably has the least upside in the short term. And if it succeeds, it has the most upside in the long term. And so if you're holding for a multi-cycle bet, my number one bet would be Solana. Okay, so that would be definitely, when I look at the fundamentals of Solana, my number one bet will be Solana. That said, I don't think that Solana is going to outperform SUI or Hype this cycle. So I think when you look at SUI or Hype in Q1, I don't think that Sol outperforms SUI or Hype up until March, and I don't think that Sol outperforms. But I do think, and I don't think it outperforms by the end of the cycle. But if you're looking at a multi-cycle approach, in other words, you're going to hold this token for the next 5 or 6 years, Sol would be my best bet because it has the most network effects, and the other two in the bear market are probably going to suffer a hell of a lot more. Now, between SUI and Hype, which one is going to outperform by Q1 2025? I think I have to put my money on SUI. And the reason why I have to put my money on SUI is because there's about 75 days left in Q1, and SUI has the most network effect. They're one of the sponsors in the inauguration ball. They're making all the right moves. And if you're asking me to lay down a trade for just the next 75 days, I think that it's going to be very close, but I think SUI is going to win. I don't think Solana's got a chance. Now, which one would you hold other than Solana? Because I think Solana will win over multi-cycle. Which one would you hold if you were of the other two, if you were holding multi-cycle? Let me know in the comments. Which one would you hold out of SUI and Hype? Which one would you hold for multi-cycle?
Multi-cycle. Probably SUI multi-cycle.
SUI multi-cycle. Josh, who would you hold multi-cycle? SUI or Hype?
Probably SUI.
Probably SUI. Hardest, who would you hold? All right, let me know in the comments who you would hold. I think if I was holding multi-cycle, would I hold SUI or would I hold Hype? You know what? I'll tell you the answer to that tomorrow. I'll see you guys again tomorrow. Until then, if you enjoyed the show, obliterate the like button one more time and trade well, my friends.